Mic check, 1 2 1 2. Mic check, 1 2 1 2. Who do we have here with us?
LaKresha's Roberts,
Nah, wait.
Democratic candidate for Attorney General.
Ladies and gentlemen, Democrat. Hold on, before we even get into that, can you rap?
I have my share of talents, but basketball and rapping, they're not.
So what's your
part of
talents?
them.
What's one of your talents? One of your hidden talents?
You know, I think my ability to be empathetic, thoughtful, even keeled. Yeah, those sorts of things.
Those sorts of things?
Yeah, just the plain, simple kind of stuff.
Listen, plain and simple is what this lady is not. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Taking Over the World podcast. I'm here with LaKresha's Roberts, who is running for
Attorney General for the state of Delaware.
Amen. Attorney General. Listen, I'm not gonna lie, okay? You know, I grew up in Wilmington, Delaware, nice little hood, right on the north side, and we talk a little bit. You used to watch TV, you watch these Law and Order, all these shows. You always see these attorney, you see the lawyers, but you don't necessarily know exactly what they do.
Right.
And when I heard you was running for Attorney General, I was like, well, okay, let me dive into what the Attorney General actually is in charge of. And if you can tell us and the people out there who might not know, what does Attorney General actually really mean?
So the Attorney General in the state of Delaware does quite a bit. First and foremost, what people are most familiar with is the fact that prosecution of crimes. So the AG's office it's called the Attorney General's office or the Delaware Department of Justice. It has 5 divisions. The first one is the criminal division. It's the largest division. It has a little over 100 attorneys, and they handle all the prosecution of crimes throughout the state of Delaware. They have the civil division, and those attorneys represent state agencies. So like the Kids Department or the Department of Labor, they provide legal advice to those agencies. Next, you have the Fraud and Consumer Protection Division. So when we're dealing with maybe, a business that's doing the questionable, taking advantage of consumers or conducting questionable business practices, that would fall under their purview. You have the Family Division, which handles all sorts of areas of the law. It's kind of diverse. So child support enforcement, juvenile delinquency prosecution, and representing the Division of Family Services to bring youth into foster care. And finally, we have the Office of Civil Rights and Public Trust. So that office actually handles any case where there's an allegation of a public official or a law enforcement officer being involved in some sort of wrongdoing.
So you're in charge of all that?
All that.
All of that?
All that, yeah.
And you're in charge of all of that. First and foremost, what made you even want to run for Attorney General?
So I spent my entire career really at the Department of Justice, but prior to going to DOJ, I worked at Family Court, and that's where I became exposed to the law in a very particular kind of way. So there I was a mediation and arbitration officer. So I was working with families to really address sort of the issues that we never talk about in public. So when you're going through, families are splitting up, you're dealing with custody issues, you're dealing with child support, you're dealing with, petitions for protection from abuse. Those sorts of things are what I use the law to help families sort of navigate through and come to some sort of an agreement. And I really liked my work. I liked dealing with those very difficult and intimate sort of issues. And then take it one step further, on the arbitration side, I worked with young people who had committed a criminal offense, and they were considered to be first-time offenders. And it was really just an opportunity to be a voice outside of their parents to say, all right, you made a mistake. How do we fix it? Right. You're going to do a little community service. Your mom says that you could benefit from some counseling. We're going to get you some counseling, and then we're going to get this charge dismissed. So I love that work. I actually worked full-time there while I was in law school. So once I graduated, I went to the Department of Justice. And there I was in the family division. So I continued my work really focused on young people, families, and really helping them navigate the legal system. So fast forward, After 8 years at the Department of Justice, I moved up the ranks pretty quickly. By 6 years
Good plug.
in,
Good plug.
Yeah,
I moved up very quickly.
I
Just to let you
did.
guys know
I did.
I'm a stud. Nah, go
Well,
ahead.
I think part of what I bring to the table is experience. So, after prosecuting cases for 6 years, I was promoted to be the director of the family division. Matt Den appointed me to that position, and then just a year later, he asked me to be the Chief Deputy Attorney General. So I was second in command of the office under Attorney General Matt Den. And when he decided that he was not going to run for re-election, I had to decide what I wanted to do. Right. And obviously, never thinking that I would be a political candidate, I initially really shied away from even entertaining the idea. But, people started announcing their candidacy, and I had to really dig deep and think, okay, do I have something to offer the public? What can I offer voters? And I think it's my background as an attorney and my commitment to really helping people. That has not been a traditional function of the Department of Justice. Right. Historically, the Department of Justice has been, that office that said, okay, a crime's been committed, we're going to be reactive, we're going to prosecute. But how helpful is that to our community? I think as Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the state of Delaware, you have an obligation to keep people safe to begin with, right, versus just being reactive and prosecuting crimes. So that's why I decided to run.
Amen. All right. Now what is your main platform that you're running on?
Yeah.
What do you stand behind?
I stand behind all sorts of things. I think the most important topic that voters want to discuss during this election cycle is really criminal justice reform. Yeah. And I think that really coincides nicely with my message. When we start to focus on investing in people and diversion, we have an opportunity to not only help people who have been labeled as defendants in the criminal justice process, but we get to keep the public safe and focus on victims, avoiding having victims come in the door to begin with. So a major part of my platform is focused on prevention. And I think we have two opportunities there. It starts with young people. We had the CDC report come as a result of the gun violence in the city of Wilmington, and that was back in 2015. And, really what that came down to was identifying people who are at risk and providing them with services, and that's primarily young people. So, we need to focus on creating the data collection system to actually do that, and it costs a lot of money, and it hasn't happened yet. As Attorney General, I really want to be a champion for that effort and advocate for that, because we need to be identifying youth who are at risk and providing them with services and keeping them out of the system. The second part of that is, look, kids are going to make mistakes, but do they need the baggage of a criminal charge or a criminal history? No. Really that serves as an impediment to young people very early in their lives. So we need to focus on expanding diversion programs for youth. So like what I talked about, the work that I did at the family court with the arbitration program, we need more opportunities like that for young people to make sure that they can make a mistake and they can learn from it. There can be repercussions to a mistake, but not necessarily a criminal history. The second opportunity we have is really to focus on reentry. And I really became much more exposed to that as a candidate. But over 90% of people who are incarcerated are going to come back to the community. And if we're not arming them with the tools that they need to be successful, we're really setting them up for failure. Recidivism is very real. Mm-hmm. It's at about 70% for adults and 80% for youth. So we really need to help them be successful. A lot of the nonprofits have stepped up in that area in our community. But once again, Chief Law Enforcement Officer, you need to be advocating for more funding, because there's a lot more people in the community that can benefit from those programs.
Gotcha. And I know we worked on I know you talk about criminal justice reform. Excuse my voice out there, ladies and gentlemen, for the people out there. I actually just got over a cold, so I'm working on it. But we actually had the chance, my first time actually meeting you, and I heard about you. Mm-hmm. Shout out to LaKresha. I want to say LaKresha Jackson. She was actually my first guest, and we talked about, I was like, hey, we want to get some guests on there. She told me about you. Uh-huh. And I think at the time, I think you just found out you were pregnant. I think okay. So. I think when you probably Because you just had your baby.
I had my son March 22nd of this year.
March 22nd, yeah. And I think you announced your candidacy in February.
At the end of January.
End of January.
Yeah, so I was pregnant when I left my job and decided to run for office.
Listen, I was going to dive a little bit more into the politics.
Yeah.
And when we can, I'm pretty sure people who have, if they listen to this interview, they probably heard of you. And also make sure you go to her Facebook website, check her out. But I want to dive into who you are, who you really are, and dive into that. And like you talk about some of the decisions that you make and kind of diving into that. Like you said, you were pregnant with your third child? Second child.
Yeah, I have a daughter, 7-year-old Mackenzie.
Who's actually in the studio today. Shout out to Mackenzie. What's up, girl? Like she's over there. She's going to be tall, just like you. If y'all don't know, LaKresha's, how tall are you? 6
feet.
You look taller than that.
Oh, and I usually wear heels. So when you see me, I'm usually 6'3", 6'4".
6'3", 6'4". You walk in, and people can definitely tell when you walk in.
Oh, yeah.
I'm pretty sure, right? So you're pregnant at the time. Mm-hmm. How was that, making that decision, knowing you're about to have a child, knowing that you're going to be running and out there on the road campaigning when you just had a newborn?
So, it was scary because, look, like I said, I spent my career at the Department of Justice, and I was doing well. I'm succeeding.
You moved up fast. Don't forget,
I'm moving up the ranks. And, from the perspective of, a girl who is a product of the public school system, a first generation college student, my parents, I came from a regular middle class household. They're looking at me like, okay, girl, you're doing it. Like, hold on tight to this job. Don't leave. You got
a good job.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think part of that is just like an old school mentality. Like once you get a job, you keep it. A good job, you keep it. So I felt a little bit of that pressure. At the same time, I'm a state employee. I have very good benefits. But when I took a step back and thought about the bigger picture, when I talk about young people and the need to reform the system and diversion, it's not just about the kids that I encounter in my work at the Department of Justice. It's about my kids, too. A lot of voters are in tune with the fact that our criminal justice system is unfair, that people of color are disproportionately represented in our criminal justice system, and there is a very real potential that could impact my kids at some point in time. So there came a time where I had to say, now's the time for me to fight for my kids and everybody else in the state of Delaware. I don't want the next Attorney General to be a status quo AG and to settle for the nonsense that has, historically plagued Delaware. It's time to move the department forward. So I left and I did it.
Now, what do you say to somebody who says, okay, LaKresha, like you said, you grew up in a middle-class household, and you're fighting for justice reform, and from a lot of these people who come from communities such as Section 8, such as the projects, and people who have low income, and they might say to you, how can you understand where we come from if you've never been here? What do you say to some people who might say that to you along this campaign?
People have said it to me along the campaign, and it actually happened very recently. When actually the night we had the debate at the Hope Commission, at the Achievement Center, someone said it to me. And I said, okay, so when you going to take me to the North Side? Let's go.
You say you're going to take me to the hood?
Like,
where you going to take me to the hood?
All right, you're right. I can't argue with that. That's not a life that I've ever experienced.
Right.
So, by the next week, me and my new friend that I made at the Achievement Center went for a walk just to talk to people and understand what they're experiencing and what they're concerned about. Because one thing that I've learned as a statewide candidate is throughout this state, from community to community, it's not just about the hood, it's about people in Sussex County that live in rural Sussex. Their concerns and experiences are different too, and everybody matters. So it's about getting out there and really embracing lifestyles that you may not have personally experienced, but having an open mind and wanting to understand a different perspective. And I mean, take it one step further, my parents didn't come from very much either. So, my grandparents, knowing what they came from and just feeling a sense of being fortunate to grow up in a middle-class household, but understanding my parents didn't have that growing up.
Absolutely.
Gives me some perspective as well.
Absolutely. Now, like you said, I mean, I brought up a great point about, hey, we understand we got problems up here in the city, but we also got problems down in Sussex and those counties. Mm-hmm. Now, what have you learned on this journey, to Attorney General, as far as from down, I'll call it down south, slower, lower, and from, which is a little bit faster pace up here in Wilmington? What have you learned that you can probably benefit from the most?
Right. I think that just issues that we're reading about in the news most recently. When you go to Sussex County, they want to talk about water. It's not necessarily about violent crime. They're concerned about having safe drinking water. Yeah. That's crazy. We live in a developed country. There is absolutely no reasonable explanation as to why that should be a fear for anyone living in the United States, let alone in the state of Delaware. And it just gives me an appreciation for the fact that the Department of Justice can be a key player in that environmental battle too. Oftentimes we're always talking about, okay, gun violence and urban crime, but environmental justice is just as important.
Absolutely.
And the Department of Justice has to really be a leader there and say, all right, enough is enough. Like I mentioned earlier, DOJ Civil Division represents state agencies, including DNREC, and the department has to be a partner with DNREC and really start holding manufacturers and big business refineries accountable for, really violating the law and being dismissive of, the health of communities. And if if it requires that we file lawsuits, then that's what the Department of Justice needs to do. And I think, an added layer of filing lawsuits allows the process to be much more transparent instead of what the community sees as these backdoor, behind door deals that results in fines that become the cost of doing business and no real change in how businesses are doing business in our state. Right.
And you're going to make sure you get those guys, right?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Now, you're running against, I think, 4 other candidates.
3 others.
3 others? Mm-hmm. Somebody dropped out?
No, just the 4 of us.
How many did we have at the...
4.
It was 4?
Mm-hmm.
But the one guy didn't show up.
Oh, that's right. He didn't. So it was just the 3 of us.
It was just the 3 of you. 3 of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You're right. There. One person didn't show up.
One person didn't show up. What do you have to say about the other candidates? Go ahead. Spill the tea. Go ahead.
There's
Talk
not
bad
much
about
tea.
There's
There's not much tea.
Come on. Don't.
I'll say what I said from the beginning. It gives
I'm kidding.
voters.
I don't want to get you.
It's all right. No,
But here's the real question: what separates you from them?
Really, what it is a balance of experience and vision. There are candidates that tout 30 years of experience and, working under 2 different administrations and upper level management as experience. But, I hope that voters have an opportunity to take a step back and say, wait a minute, but that's what got us here today with the broken criminal justice system. And, that's not, voters have to ask themselves, is that what you want moving forward? Or do you want a candidate that's worked their way up from the entry-level prosecutor, so understands how the office functions, right? And then you have that upper-level management experience. So I can come in the door day one and hit the ground running. I know where the issues are. I know how to fix it. Not every candidate can say that. Not every candidate can say that, 1, they have the experience, and 2, they're really committed to changing the criminal justice system. Or they can say it, but their history says otherwise. So it's important that voters really do your research.
I got you.
Do your research.
I got you.
Yeah.
So you wanted people to do the research. I see you were starting to get fired up a little bit. I see.
Mackenzie, in campaign mode.
She did get fired up. Okay, then let's dive into some of the emotional stuff when it comes to this campaign.
Yeah.
If you sure you're okay with this?
I'm completely okay with it.
Okay. Now I always like to dive into who the person really is.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we talked about politics, what you stand on, what you're running for. And I know when I first met you, I heard about you. Like I said, I heard about you. But when I met you, I was very, very impressed. I'm not just saying that because you're here. I was very impressed. I told a lot of people Another friend of mine, Danielle, she was there. No, Danielle wasn't there. But I told her about you. She was like, I heard about it, boom, boom, boom. I said, I was very, very impressed when I met you and then heard you speak and what you stand for. I can tell you, you know what I mean? You got it. Now, I know a lot of times when somebody's running for something, a lot of things change. A lot of things can change within their relationships with their, are you married or you're engaged?
I'm
right now?
married.
You're married. And you're married for how long?
I've been married for, what is this, September? About 9 months. Yeah.
Wow. Listen.
Or not September yet, so about 8 months.
8 months.
Yeah.
So, hold on, I'm gonna backtrack this.
Yeah.
So, married for 8 months. Fresh baby.
Fresh baby.
Fresh election.
Yes.
How are you handling all of this?
It's a lot. I will start with the fact that I'm naturally an introvert. So being a political candidate is not something that came naturally to me. So someone in the political arena that I really respect had a very firm conversation with me early on and said, LaKresha, in order to be an effective candidate, you have to be out there. You have to be that person that walks in the coffee shop and you just start talking to people and shaking hands and making sure that they know that you're running for office.
Absolutely. That's
been a huge adjustment for me because, it makes you vulnerable. You have to be very comfortable with people.
Let me just move this so the people can definitely see.
Sounds good. You have to be comfortable with people disagreeing with you or being upset with something that you said. And, I pride myself in being a woman of conviction. And, if I say it, I really mean it and I stand by it. And, what I try to do is have, respectful conversation with people and sometimes walk away and say, okay, well, it's okay to disagree. Yeah. So that's been a tough part for me. I think from the perspective of my family, it's time consuming. So it's been hard to be away from home. It's been, just as a mother of an infant, I gave birth and 2 weeks later, I was at a Democratic committee meeting presenting about my platform. That's literally how this process has been, and I've been moving ever since. It's physically and mentally challenging. Anyone that's a parent knows that, look, when they're this young, they are not sleeping through the night. So, I function on very little sleep. But, look, I think this is an opportunity.
That's good.
I try. I do my best. But I see this as an opportunity to really be an example for women because there's so many people out there, even before I announced, that would say, you're pregnant, there's no way you could run. Just making assumptions about me and what I'm capable of. And look, I'm obviously not the only person or woman to ever experience this, but I hope that, my story is something that other women can embrace and know that, you never have to let anyone and their assumptions about your situation or what you're capable of dictate what you actually do and what you accomplish. So I've really embraced it. It's been very difficult, but I've embraced this process for what it is.
Absolutely. And like I said, your daughter's here in the studio. You're giving her a great role model to look up to. And I can tell she's full of energy when I first met her.
She is.
She's gonna be great.
And she's not like mommy. She loves being the center of attention. She will bust out a good dance for you in a second.
Heartbeat.
Yeah.
Now,
Loves
as a
it.
parent, will you try to stop her from being outgoing and being? It was a funny story. I was walking down. Starbucks is not too far from here. This is a little bit off subject, but it goes into the parenting part aspect. And her kid was walking like she was bent back, where her hands were touching the ground and her feet, and she was walking to Starbucks like that. Her mom was like, "Stop it! Why are you doing? You always got to be so extra. You're always doing too much or whatever." And it was, mom or whatever. And something was in me. God said, "Go in there and go talk to that parent." Because to me, that kid has an unbelievable talent, right? And why would you want your kid to be bottled up?
Right.
Let them go ahead and express themselves. Always be respectful, but express yourself. So I go into the Starbucks and I say, and she's over there. I say, "Hey, little kid." I say, "Hey, I see what you did. That was awesome. You want to do gymnastics?" She was like, "I want to." And I'm talking to her mother. I can tell where they come from or whatever, right? I was like, "Yeah, we grew up on the east side." Boom, boom, boom. I talked to her mom. I was like, "Yeah, she, your daughter was doing that." She was like, "Yeah, she does that." Yeah. I said, "I'm not trying to tell you how to parent by any means." that is not my place. And please don't hate me when I say this, but I said, she has an extreme talent. And I said, I know you said she's being extra. I said, because God put extra in her. Mm-hmm. So you got to let her go ahead and use that. And she was like, I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we don't want to tame our children to be, you know what I mean? Like, we put our fears on our children. So I don't have any children yet. But I always say when I have kids, I'm like, I'm going to let them go ahead and be themselves, but teach them how to be respectful, of course. And I'm going to tame them because they hear no so much that when they get older, they're a little bit timid. They're a little afraid of this world and uncomfortable. And my thing is, that's the only way you're going to grow is being uncomfortable.
I agree.
You
Look, parenting is challenging. I'll tell anyone who asks. Kenzie, since she's been little, has been a very strong-willed child. And even though it made it difficult as far as parenting, a toddler all the way through 7, at the same time, there's strength in that attribute, and it needs to be fostered. And I consider my role to be a mom who's just smoothing out the edges, but letting her be who she really is.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, this is going to be tough for you. Were you like on a campaign trail, like, don't take this the wrong way, like breastfeeding, like as soon as you announced?
Oh, I am nursing.
Absolutely.
It's tough. If we're going to have this conversation, you ready for this conversation?
I'm ready for this conversation.
Oh, yes. I'm a nursing mother. So, driving up and down the road, I'm pumping, and it is a lot of work.
While you're driving? I know, don't text and drive, but pump while you drive? Is that a new law you're going to pass?
My campaign manager is the driver, and thankfully she has an SUV with tinted windows in the back. But yes, I am a nursing mom, so that's just an added layer of responsibility.
Yeah.
But once again, to those who say, oh, you're a mom, you can't do that. Yes, you can. It just takes more discipline. It takes, I have to work harder than most to get the job done, but I'm very capable of doing it.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about some of these capabilities. Okay, you're running. You're on a campaign. You got this trail. It's been very, very tough for you, this journey. How do you think, and one thing about this podcast is about failures and goals, and we talked about it before, and just overcoming challenges and adversities along the way. You're running, and they're going to announce on September 6th. Mm-hmm. September 6th comes and say you don't win. How will you handle that? How do you think you're going to handle that?
I'll be absolutely fine. I'm a Christian woman. I'm a woman of faith. And one thing that I know is that this path will lead me somewhere. And I have to be comfortable just trusting in God and not necessarily leaning on sight or my own understanding of the situation, and just keep going. There are so many valuable lessons that I've learned about myself and people throughout this process that I wouldn't change for the world. So there is no loss, regardless of the outcome. I'm running to win, don't get me wrong, but there is absolutely no loss to be had.
Absolutely. Now, on the flip side, I don't think you're not going to win. I'm not saying that. How do you think you're going to handle it if you do win? Because it's going to be so tiring, hours. Like you said, fresh new toddler. How do you think you're going to handle it once you win?
Just keep pushing through. I think that I have really embraced my plan to focus on prevention and to expand the traditional role of the Department of Justice to include that. And my take on it is, all right, September 6th, the Democratic candidate will be announced. We'll know who it is. We have through November. There is a Republican candidate. So we'll have to deal with the general election as well. But then after that, there's just a couple of months until the next AG is in that office. And if assuming I win the primary and the general, it's about making sure that I'm literally ready to hit the ground running when I walk in that door. So to the extent that I can start drafting policies and really brainstorming on how I reconfigure this office to be a successful one under my leadership, that's what I'm going to be doing.
Absolutely. Now, what has been the toughest part of this whole journey to overcome for you?
I think just being so exposed publicly, that's tough because, look, some people are going to love you and some people are going to hate you, and some people are going to smile in your face, and then they're going to say really mean things behind your back.
Listen, I smile in your face. I don't say anything mean behind your back. I promise.
It doesn't have to be you,
promise.
This is just when you really put yourself out there and you're exposed in that way, that's what you open yourself up to. It just is what it is. So you have to be thick-skinned, and you have to make sure that you don't read the blogs and all the comments on, articles and all that good stuff. So, and, sometimes to a lot of people's credit, they want to have very difficult conversation with you, to the extent that they disagree with you. They're ready to go toe to toe, and you got to be prepared for that too. But it's hard, but I'm embracing it. And I like the growth that I'm experiencing because of it. Yeah.
You start diving into my language right there. That's have this thing called failures and goals. And I always say, in order to achieve your greatest goals, you're going to have to fail greatly.
Of course.
I mean, like fall on your face type of cry type of fail.
Yeah.
And we ain't gonna dive into it because I know you got a lot of time, and I gotta get you back out there in the campaign room. But I'm gonna ask you anyway. What has been your greatest failure?
Failing the Delaware bar. I think that.
And did you fail it once, or how many times did you fail?
Once.
Gotcha.
Once, and that was enough.
I have a friend
Talk
of mine.
about a hard fall. It hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts. What were you gonna say about your friend?
Actually, I think I introduced her to you.
Okay.
Where were we at?
Don't say her name if you.
I'm not gonna say her name.
When we were at the restaurant.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
She had, she failed the bar, and she was down, and I'm like, listen, it's okay. Like, they're gonna, like, it happens. That doesn't mean I know plenty of people who failed the bar who are great lawyers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She, went to law school, did her thing, and she just took it again.
Okay,
and
good.
I think the results don't come back, and it's like 6 months.
October or something like that. Yeah.
And I think she's gonna be cool, and
She
you
will be.
were. It was so funny. We was in Libby's. Plug to Libby's. You better give me sponsor this for this one. We were in Libby's, and we were sitting there. You came in, and it's so funny that because after we met that day, we seen each other like 5 times within 1 week.
Yeah.
And to see you walk in there, and I think it was so great for her to see you being an African American woman running for Attorney General. To see you in that seat, and we were just having a conversation about how she's, take the bar again, et cetera, et cetera. So for her to see that, we talked about it a little bit after, being her, I think it was tremendous. So I always say, excuse me, sometimes people the symbolism of them are actually bigger than what they actually have done. I'm not saying that you're not going to do. It's like President Barack Obama. The symbolism of him being the first African-American president was actually bigger than anything he ever done, because that gives hope to some kids.
people, yeah.
You know what I mean? Say, for example, Mackenzie, she's the only thing she probably known before Trump was an African-American president. Some
Which
kids,
is
that's
awesome.
all they see. That's all they know.
Right.
What do you mean? You can't be a black president. That's all I know.
That's all you know.
Yeah, that's all you know. So I think what you're doing is phenomenal.
Thank
I really
you.
want to see you get up in there and see what you do.
Thank you.
I know you got to get out of here, but really quick. I always like to do a little quick call and response. You ready?
Okay.
You sure you're ready for this? Let me make sure my
think
cameras.
so.
Are we good? You press reset on that one already? Okay. Before we even get there, tough part. We're going to dive into it. Nah, leave it alone.
Go ahead.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. I had Tizzy on last week, and I think
Okay.
you know Tizzy. We
Yeah.
talked about it, Tizzy, and she's a biracial child. And your husband, he is
White.
okay. I didn't know if he was Italian. I don't want to get in any trouble. To have him okay. Where'd you meet him at?
We met in a program for like young leaders in the state of Delaware.
Awesome.
So we met, and he's an attorney, but we really would have never crossed paths but for the program. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you met in the program, and now you guys have a child. You're married. How do you, like we talked about bringing up your children, how do you think you will attack when it comes to the identity that a boy or girl?
Boy.
A boy. Coming up in this world today as far as identifying with who I am. Am I black? Am I white? Am I mixed?
Yeah.
Culturally, hip-hop, is it alternative? I mean, just so many things. How do you think you and your husband will attack that issue?
I don't know.
Yeah.
To tell you the truth, I think that every child is different. And one thing that I've learned with Mackenzie is that you sort of just, you go through the motions and you adjust and you learn along with your child. And my son's name is Maximus.
Maximus.
Yes. I like how you said, can you say that one more
Maximus.
time? Yeah.
We're going to name him Maximus.
So I think it will be a similar experience with Max. And he can identify however he wants to identify. What I have to be mindful of as his parent is teaching him to understand that the world will see him a certain way. We touched on this a little bit at the Achievement Center when I was talking to a young woman about raising children of color, not just in Delaware, but in the U.S. It is, you have to prepare them for things that, innocent children shouldn't even have to be concerned about. And I'll have to do that for him. So that will be tough. Those are always tough conversations with their kids. And I find that Mackenzie is always very curious, and she asks very solid questions about what's going on in the world. And that's always been an easy opening to have those sorts of conversations. And I'll do the same with my son.
Did she ask where babies come from? Okay.
Yeah, of course. They came from mommy's belly. You saw Max in mommy's belly, right?
That's good. We're leaving it at that. All right, back to the call response. I got to get you out of here. Okay. And we talked about what was your greatest failure, but tell me what has been your greatest success.
Oh, wow, that's a good one. Wow. Okay.
I got you.
You did. You got me good too. And I can only name one. I think that motherhood, even though I'm not done yet, right? But there is just something really tough about, from the time you conceive all the way through birth. It's a difficult process. And then, I think as women, we have to find that balance. Regardless of whether or not you have a spouse, it's, you have to, a lot of that responsibility is just going to fall on you. Just it's nature, right? So learning to be a strong mom and love my kids hard and fight for them every day through the work that I do, but then balance my time in a way that's conducive to always making sure that I'm loving and connecting with my kids. It's a unique challenge that I've really embraced, and I try to do my absolute best. But, I think so far I'm doing a solid job. So.
Definitely are running up and down the 95, nursing in the backseat. That's definitely a great job now, kid. But I think you're doing a phenomenal job.
Thank you.
So you're a phenomenal role model to Mackenzie, and I'm pretty sure Maximus out there. Last question for you.
Yeah.
Taking Over the World podcast is about pursuing your goals and your dream and aspiration, whether they might be. What does taking over your world mean to you? What is taking over your world?
Taking over my world, I think it's just contributing in a positive way to just help people. There was a time in my life that I just had a very focused direction with regard to my career. And I looked at it as, all right, I'm an attorney. One day I'm going to be a judge, and that's going to be great. I'll retire from the bench, assuming that's what the good Lord had in the cards for me. But that's how I saw it. And now that I've become a political candidate, it has really opened my eyes. Like, for example, I would have never met you, more likely than not. We would have never had this conversation or the conversations we've had over the past few weeks, but for me being in this position. And, just multiply that by hundreds of people that I've met and hundreds of people that have been open with me and let me in and helped me to understand what they're experiencing in our community. And I see my career path very different, and it's really about being of service. I don't know what that looks like at this point, but whatever it may be, I intend to fully embrace it. And that's the plan.
Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, LaKresha, hold on, is that's your husband's last name, right?
No, I haven't changed my name.
You ain't changed your name?
Nope,
Okay,
I'm still Roberts.
She's still Roberts. Still got a little bit of the hood.
Make sure.
She's still got a little bit of the hood. I'm messing. What's his last name?
We got Moultrie. Yeah.
LaKresha
Roberts.
Sidebar. When I seen you, it was like LaKresha Roberts running from church. I said, oh, she comes straight from the hood. When they like LaKresha, I said, oh, she from round the way. I said, where's she from? Southbridge? LaKresha.
There we go. Look, I
LaKresha
tell voters time and time again, there's only one LaKresha on the ballot.
Listen,
There's no confusion. So you
cannot.
know what button to push when you get in there.
Listen,
That's it.
you know what button to push, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you pushed the play button and played it all the way through. LaKresha, we appreciate you coming on through
Of
the Taking
course,
Over the
my
World
pleasure.
podcast. Looking forward to September 6th.
Uh-huh.
And we're going to see what's going to go down. And once you get elected, you're going to come back?
Of course.
You better, listen.
Absolutely.
You better come back.
Absolutely.
All right, she's coming back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Taking Over the World podcast. Cheers.
That was awesome.